So there's this very specific, uh, deeply unsettling feeling that we all experience.
Well, absolutely. All the time.
Right. And it is probably something we feel way more often than we actually care to admit to our friends or, our families.
Yeah, we definitely hide it.
I want you to picture this scenario in your mind. You have just come home after a long, grueling day. The kind of day where your brain feels like a computer browser with like 90 open tabs.
And half of them are frozen.
Exactly. Half of them are frozen, music is playing from some unknown source, and the cooling fan is just screaming.
We all know that exact mental state.
Right. So you walk through your front door, you drop your bag on the floor, you don't even bother taking off your jacket yet, and you just kind of collapse onto the edge of the living room couch.
Ah, yes. The universal slumping posture of just modern ambient fatigue.
Yeah, ambient fatigue. That's a great way to put it.
You're just perching on the very edge of the cushion, right? Like not even fully committing to reclining backward and resting your spine.
Yes. You are suspended in this weird physical purgatory, and the room around you is incredibly alive. It is filled with the warm, chaotic, beautiful sounds of everyday life.
The real world.
Yeah, maybe it's the sound of your children tumbling around on the wool rug, clicking together those plastic building blocks, constructing some unstable tower just to knock it down and laugh.
Sounds lovely, honestly.
It is. And you can smell dinner simmering on the stove in the kitchen. Maybe that sharp, familiar tang of garlic and onions hitting hot olive oil.
Oh, the best smell.
Right. The lighting in the room is soft from a floor lamp in the corner. It is the exact scene, the exact sanctuary that you probably spent your entire 8-hour workday looking forward to.
Wait.
Here's the agonizing catch. You're not actually there.
Right. Your physical mass is occupying space on the furniture, but your consciousness is, well, it's entirely absent.
Instead of being present in that beautiful, messy, real moment, your face is bathed in this cold, harsh blue glow radiating from your smartphone screen. You are psychologically miles away.
Completely checked out.
You're staring at an inbox, answering just one more message that could absolutely, without a doubt, wait until tomorrow morning.
But you feel like it can't.
Exactly. You are scrolling through a bottomless pool of automated notifications, checking off just one more minor administrative task, swiping your thumb upward and tapping the glass in this, numb hypnotic trance.
Yeah, it really is a trance.
And the crazy part is, you are doing everything society tells you is right and productive, yet you feel entirely hollow.
The disconnect between where our bodies are and where our attention goes, it has really become the defining crisis of our era. And what makes it so insidious is how normal it feels.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a crisis in the moment.
No, not at all. We have completely normalized this state of constant low-grade absence.
Which is exactly the mystery we are unpacking today. Welcome to our exploration. We are taking a stack of fascinating, completely anonymous sources today, ranging across a wildly diverse spectrum of human knowledge.
It's a really eclectic mix.
Yeah, it really is. We are looking at the foundational principles of quantum physics, the cutting edge of behavioral neuroscience, some incredibly practical time design strategies, and these really profound philosophical reflections on the actual nature of success.
And our mission today is to synthesize all of this, all this seemingly disconnected, highly complex information into a singular, cohesive roadmap.
Right, because the goal is to figure out how to stop merely surviving our chaotic, demanding days and how to transition into a state where we are consciously, deliberately creating our reality.
The core objective here is monumental, but the materials we're looking at suggest it is entirely achievable if we, just understand the machinery of our own minds.
Yeah.
We are trying to bridge the gap between abstract scientific theory and the gritty reality of a Tuesday evening in your living room.
Because that parent on the couch, illuminated by the artificial glow of the phone screen, that is survival mode masquerading as productivity.
Ooh, yes. Masquerading as productivity. That's exactly it.
And it brings us to a really uncomfortable realization embedded deep within our source material. There is this immense frustration that sets in when you finally realize that being highly efficient does not equal being present.
It certainly does not equal being fulfilled.
No, you can literally achieve the mythological status of inbox zero.
The Holy Grail.
Right, the Holy Grail. You can cross every single item off your daily to-do list with a red pen. And at the end of the day, as you lie in bed staring at the ceiling, you can still feel entirely empty, completely disconnected from the moments and the people that actually matter to your heart.
The sources refer to this trap as the illusion of the clear deck.
The clear deck, I like that.
Yeah, because we have been culturally conditioned, really since we were in grade school, to believe that if we just finish all our homework, if we answer every message, file every document, respond to every digital ping, we will finally earn the right to feel peaceful.
Like peace is a transaction.
Exactly. We operate under the delusion that peace is a reward for exhausting our task list. But the research points out exactly why this happens and why the task list is actually infinite. You will never reach the bottom.
Because there's always another email.
Always. We are living our lives in a constant, unbroken biological state of reaction.
Okay, so if I am living in reaction, my day is basically an algorithm written by other people, and I'm just executing their code.
Yeah.
My email inbox dictates the first hour of my morning, my shared calendar dictates the second, the news alerts on my phone dictate my mood by lunch. What does that actually look like underneath the hood, mechanically speaking?
Mechanically, it is a biological hijacking. When your day is dictated by external inputs rather than internal intentions, your nervous system interprets this constant, unpredictable barrage of demands as a literal threat environment.
Wait, like a physical threat?
Yes. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, you are reacting to a device that was engineered by behavioral psychologists to hijack your dopamine system.
Just reaching for the phone in the nightstand.
Right. And when you live in this reactive state, your brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, becomes hyperactive. You are locked into survival mode, driven by the stress hormones of an always-on culture.
Wow.
Your adrenal glands are actively pumping cortisol into your bloodstream because your brain, on a primal level, cannot distinguish between the stress of an incoming high-priority email and the stress of a predator in the bushes.
Okay, I have to pause you there because I think that biological distinction is crucial. We all know this feeling perfectly. It is that low-level vibrating anxiety in the chest.
Yeah.
It's the phantom vibration syndrome where you think your phone buzzed in your pocket, but it actually didn't.
We've all been there.
But why is it so incredibly hard to just override it? I mean, why can't that exhausted person on the couch just toss the phone onto the cushion and get down on the rug with their kids? If we know it's bad for us, why does our brain force us to keep staring at the glass?
To understand that, we have to look at how the brain actually allocates its energy. The brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ, and it prioritizes survival above all else. Engaging deeply with your children, reading a complex book, or planning a long-term creative project, all of these things require the prefrontal cortex.
Right, the higher level thinking part.
Exactly. That is the part of the brain responsible for executive function, empathy, and deep focus. But the prefrontal cortex is slow, and it requires a massive amount of metabolic energy to run.
So it feels like we are trying to cook a complex, delicate, 5-course gourmet meal while someone is standing in the kitchen doorway constantly hurling tennis balls at our heads.
That is a very stressful mental image, but yes.
Right. Eventually, you completely forget about the expensive sauce simmering on the stove and you just focus entirely on dodging the tennis balls. The sauce burns, but hey, you didn't get hit in the face.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the neurological shift. Dodging tennis balls requires immediate, reflexive, thoughtless action. It triggers your survival instincts.
It's purely defensive.
Purely. Cooking the gourmet meal requires planning, sequencing, patience, and deep focus. When you are being pelted by notifications, emails, and breaking news alerts, your brain automatically reroutes its limited energy supply away from the prefrontal cortex and sends it straight to the amygdala and the motor cortex.
So you're literally incapable of focusing on the sauce.
Exactly. You become purely defensive. Your vision literally narrows. Your heart rate variability drops.
Yeah.
You are not a bad parent or a lazy worker.
That's a huge relief to hear.
You are just a biological organism functioning exactly as evolved, prioritizing immediate incoming threats over long-term fulfillment.
And the tragic part, which our sources highlight with a very specific, painful clinical observation, is the collateral damage of this defensive posture.
Yeah, the human cost.
They describe individuals who are essentially masters of corporate productivity. These people are champions of efficiency in their professional spheres.
Right, the ones who always get it done.
But they experience this crushing midlife realization that they are missing the texture of their own existence. They are missing their child's fleeting early years. Not because they are physically at the office all night, but because of this constant low-level hum of digital distraction while they are sitting right in the living room.
Winning the battle, losing the war.
Exactly. They are winning the endless game of clearing the inbox, but they are losing the only life they have.
They have optimized their entire existence for the wrong metric. They optimized for clearing tasks rather than experiencing depth.
Hmm.
And the sources are incredibly clear on this point. You cannot just try harder to ignore the tennis balls.
Because willpower runs out.
Willpower is a finite metabolic resource. By 6 p.m., your willpower is just depleted. You need a radically different architectural approach to how you view your daily goals. You have to escape the paradigm of the infinite checklist entirely.
Okay, but even if we understand that the infinite checklist is a trap, I mean, we still have mortgages to pay, bosses to answer to, and groceries to buy.
Sure, life goes on.
We can't just abandon our responsibilities and stare at the wall. So how do we actually reclaim the driver's seat without just making another slightly more organized to-do list?
Well, the practical strategies outlined in the texts suggest a complete paradigm shift regarding how we measure a successful day.
Okay.
Instead of trying to do everything, instead of pursuing the impossible, exhausting mirage of a totally cleared schedule, the secret is to intentionally design your day around a single, non-negotiable highlight.
A single highlight, just one. Out of the dozens of things I have to do today, I'm supposed to just pick one thing. That sounds terrifying to my inner micromanager.
It definitely requires a leap of faith at first, but it is deeply grounded in cognitive behavioral principles. You still do your laundry, you still attend your mandatory meetings, but you elevate one primary focal point above the noise.
Okay, so it's not the only thing I do.
Right. The texts break down how to choose this daily highlight based on 3 specific, highly tactical criteria. Your highlight should fall into at least one of these categories: urgency, satisfaction, or joy.
Let's pull those apart because they sound very different. Urgency makes immediate sense. If my annual tax return is due tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., my highlight for today is fixing my taxes. It has to happen, or there are severe consequences.
That is a necessity-driven highlight.
Yeah.
It harnesses your stress response and channels it into a single productive laser beam rather than letting it scatter across 20 minor tasks.
God.
But the second category, satisfaction, is where the psychology gets much more interesting. This is about choosing a task that when you finally finish it will give you a profound, enduring sense of accomplishment.
Give me a tangible example of a satisfaction highlight.
So it might not be due tomorrow. It might be drafting the first chapter of a novel you've been talking about writing for 3 years.
Oh, the thing you always put off.
Exactly. Or it might be spending 2 hours pulling weeds and finally clearing out the overgrown garden in your backyard. It is something that requires deep, sustained effort and usually involves a high degree of initial friction. But it provides a massive psychological reward at the end of the day. It generates serotonin and a real sense of agency.
And the third category is joy, which honestly feels almost rebellious in our current hustle culture. A highlight does not have to be productive in the traditional economic sense of the word.
Not at all. A joy-based highlight is an act of pure presence. It could be spending 90 minutes baking a complicated, messy chocolate cake with your 7-year-old and committing to not looking at a screen the entire time.
That sounds amazing.
Or it could just be sitting on your porch with a cup of tea and reading a fiction paperback for an hour without feeling guilty. The purpose of the highlight, whether it is urgency, satisfaction, or joy, is to create a finite, tangible accomplishment or experience that brings you a sense of completion at the end of the day. It replaces the ambient anxiety of a never-ending list with the solid satisfaction of a deliberate, executed choice.
Think about the immense psychological freedom in that approach. When you wake up and declare, no matter what else happens today, no matter how many fires break out at the office, my highlight is taking my dog to the state park for a long hike, you are giving yourself unconditional permission to focus on that one meaningful thing.
Exactly. You're setting the terms.
And by doing that, you essentially build a protective armor against guilt. You stop feeling guilty about the 75 emails you deliberately choose not to answer during that hike. You are no longer dodging tennis balls. You are saying, I am going to carefully chop the garlic for this sauce, and I do not care if 100 tennis balls hit the kitchen floor behind me.
You are asserting sovereign control over your most valuable asset, which is your attention. And the sources provide some incredibly vivid sensory tactics for protecting this highlight in the real world, because deciding on the highlight in your head is only 10% of the battle.
Right, you actually have to do it.
Executing it requires engineering a physical and digital environment that actively supports deep, sustained focus.
And the texts spend a lot of time on this concept of creating a distraction-free phone. And this doesn't just mean putting it on silent or turning down the volume, because, like we said earlier, the vibration still triggers the amygdala.
Phantom buzz.
Right. It means structurally changing the device. It means actively deleting the bottomless apps, the infinite algorithmically generated scrolling feeds, the news apps that constantly push alerts, the email clients that silently fetch new data in the background.
Stripping it down.
Yeah, you strip the $1,000 supercomputer in your pocket back to a mere utility tool, a thing that makes phone calls and gives driving directions rather than carrying a portable amusement park in your pocket.
It is about removing the temptation at the root source. Psychological studies repeatedly show that relying on willpower to resist a distraction sitting right in front of you is a losing game.
It's exhausting.
If you are trying to eat healthier, and you leave a plate of warm chocolate chip cookies on your desk while you work, you will eventually eat them. Your willpower will fatigue?
I would eat them in 5 minutes.
Right. But if the cookie jar is empty, or better yet, not in the house at all, you don't need to exert any mental energy to avoid eating them. Deleting the apps removes the cognitive load of constantly resisting them.
Another deeply sensory tactic they describe is setting up a highly specific physical environment for your highlight. They use the example of a writer who wakes up hours before dawn to work on a manuscript.
I love this example.
It's so good. The way the sources describe this routine is incredibly compelling. You can almost feel the absolute heavy quiet of an early morning. It's that blue-black hour before the commuter traffic starts rumbling down the street, before the barrage of digital demands begins to flood the servers.
The world is just still.
There is the tactile, comforting ritual of filling the kettle. The sound of the water boiling, the rich, dark smell of roasting coffee beans filling the cold kitchen. You sit down at a clean desk in the dim light of a single lamp, and there is this immense, unbroken clarity. You are tackling your most important, challenging project before the rest of the world wakes up and begins aggressively demanding pieces of your attention.
It is a highly romanticized image, but the underlying neuroscience is rock solid.
Right.
It works because you are leveraging a specific biological window.
Okay, tell me about the biology of 5 a.m.
In the early morning, assuming you've slept, your prefrontal cortex is fully rested. Your cortisol levels are naturally peaking to wake you up, providing alertness. And crucially, environmental distractions are at their absolute lowest.
Right, nobody's texting you at 4:30 a.m.
Exactly. No one is expecting an immediate reply. You are essentially creating a temporal sanctuary for your attention. You are aligning your biology with your environment.
Okay, but here is where I have to play the skeptic. Or at least voice the very real frustration that I know someone listening is feeling right now as they drive to work.
Lay it on me.
What happens when you follow all these instructions perfectly? You delete the social media X from your phone, you set your alarm for 5 a.m., you wake up, the coffee is brewed, the house is perfectly quiet, but your internal battery is just completely, entirely drained.
Ah, yes. The exhaustion factor.
You sit down at that beautiful clean desk, you stare at the blinking cursor on the screen, and you simply cannot focus. Your brain feels like sludge, even though you have blocked out the perfect distraction-free window of time. Time management tactics completely fall apart if you are just an exhausted zombie sitting in a quiet room.
And that exact point of friction is the crucial pivot the source material makes. It is the bridge between amateur productivity advice and actual biological mastery. Managing your calendar, meticulously designing your time blocks, declaring a daily highlight off, all of this structural work is entirely useless if you are not simultaneously managing your internal energetic capacity and your emotional state.
So the schedule isn't enough.
Not at all. This is where the texts introduce a concept that bridges behavioral psychology with biophysics. They reveal that human emotions are not just abstract poetic feelings or psychological moods. They have literal, measurable electromagnetic properties.
Hold on, let me stop you right now. I have to push back on this. Are we talking about actual peer-reviewed, measurable physics, or is this just a new age metaphor for, having a good vibe? Because a lot of self-help material uses the word frequency to just mean being in a good mood.
I totally understand the skepticism.
Yeah.
It sounds like a metaphorical abstraction, but the sources actually point to rigorous biophysical data. The human heart and brain are electrical organs.
Right, we do EKGs and EEGs.
Exactly. The heart, in particular, produces the largest rhythmic electromagnetic field in the body. Scientists use highly sensitive magnetometers devices capable of measuring incredibly faint magnetic fields to map this out. This isn't an aura. It is a measurable biophysical reality.
Okay, I'm listening.
When you experience different emotional states, the rhythm of your heart changes, which alters the shape and frequency of the electromagnetic field it broadcasts. The sources detail a specific emotional scale that maps out these human feelings in terms of their vibrational frequency measured in hertz.
Okay, if we are talking about actual measurable hertz, let's look closely at this scale. Where do our daily emotions fall on the spectrum? Let's start at the bottom.
At the very bottom of the energetic scale, you find the lowest frequency, most contracted emotions. These are dense feelings like deep shame, chronic guilt, severe apathy, grief, and paralyzing fear.
Basically the worst ways to feel.
Right. And the texts note that these specific emotional states vibrate at very low frequencies, generally measuring well under 100 hertz.
And what does that mean for us, biologically and practically speaking, to vibrate at a low frequency? Like, if I'm sitting at my desk feeling intense guilt about a project I haven't finished, what is actually happening inside my body?
Biologically, these low-frequency feelings keep your entire organism tethered to a pure survival mindset. When you are steeped in fear or guilt, your physical body literally contracts.
You tense up.
Yes, your nervous system is prioritizing immediate self-preservation. It is a highly inefficient state that rapidly drains your physical energy reserves. Your breathing becomes shallow, depriving your brain of oxygen, your muscles tense, preparing to run or fight. Your heart rate variability becomes chaotic and jagged.
So your body thinks it's under attack.
Exactly. Neurologically, your awareness narrows down to a pinpoint. You literally cannot see the big picture. You cannot access lateral thinking or empathy because your biological hardware is entirely convinced a lethal predator is in the room with you.
So, lingering in a prolonged state of frustration or guilt about all the emails you haven't answered or the mistakes you made yesterday, it is literally like running your brain on a severe low-power mode while trying to download a massive file over a terrible dial-up Wi-Fi connection.
That's a perfect analogy.
You simply cannot download any new creative solutions to your complex problems because your mental bandwidth is entirely choked by this dense, chaotic, negative energy.
That is a highly accurate way to conceptualize the neurological bottleneck. You are operating with artificially restricted bandwidth. Your prefrontal cortex is essentially starved of blood flow. Now, conversely, as you move up the emotional scale, the measured frequency increases and the biological and cognitive effects shift dramatically.
Let's talk about those higher states. What does the high end of the spectrum look like?
As you move up, the scale point to emotions like genuine acceptance, which vibrates much higher, around 350 hertz. Moving above that, you reach profound joy, calibrated around 540 hertz.
Okay, getting higher.
And even higher, at the peak of the scale, are states of deep, unshakable peace, profound gratitude, and unconditional love. These are high-frequency, highly coherent states.
And how does the body react to those?
When you inhabit these specific emotions, your physical body relaxes. Your parasympathetic nervous system engages. Your breathing deepens. Your heart rhythm becomes incredibly smooth and coherent. It looks like a beautiful rolling sine wave on a monitor.
So the opposite of that jagged, chaotic line.
Exactly. And neurologically, your prefrontal cortex, the center of advanced creativity, problem-solving, and emotional regulation, fully comes online, bathed in oxygen and blood flow. You literally open up your neurological capacity to perceive opportunities and solutions that were physically invisible to you when you were vibrating in fear.
Wow. Let's connect this dense biophysics right back to our opening story. The exhausted parent sitting on the very edge of the couch, bathed in the blue light of the phone, ignoring the sounds of the children playing on the rug just 3 feet away.
The ambient fatigue.
Right. That parent isn't just distracted in a purely mechanical time management sense. According to this biophysical framework, their entire nervous system is vibrating at the low chaotic frequency of anxiety, overwhelm, and likely a deep silent guilt about not being present.
Their system is locked in a low hertz, highly contracted loop. Their brain is perceiving the unread emails as a survival threat.
So, to change their reality, to actually summon the physical energy to put the heavy phone down and get on the floor to play with the blocks, they don't necessarily need a better productivity app.
No, an app won't fix that.
They don't need a strict new disciplinary rule about screen time. What they actually need is to consciously, deliberately elevate their emotional frequency. They need to intentionally shift their internal state from the low-power mode of defensive anxiety to the higher expansive frequency of joy or gratitude for the family sitting right in front of them.
And that intentional shift in frequency is what actually provides the metabolic energy to change behavior. But the source material takes this concept even further into the realm of the physical. It is not just about changing your mood temporarily so you act a little nicer for 10 minutes. The sources discuss how a sustained shift in emotional frequency actually changes the physical, biological architecture of our reality over time. And this is where we enter the cutting edge of neuroscience.
This is genuinely one of the most mind-bending parts of the material we reviewed. The sources highlight a magnificent, almost unbelievable discovery in modern neuroscience. Basically, the human brain, at a fundamental processing level, cannot tell the difference between a real physical event occurring in the outside world and an intensely, vividly imagined event occurring purely within the mind.
It sounds impossible, but it is the foundational principle of how our neurology operates, proven repeatedly in functional MRI studies.
Let's give an example of that.
Okay, when you experience something in the physical material world, say biting into a sour lemon, your brain fires a specific sequence of neurons in your sensory and motor cortex, and it releases a corresponding cocktail of chemicals like saliva in your mouth. But if you sit in a quiet room, close your eyes, and vividly, intensely imagine cutting a lemon, smelling the citrus, and biting into the flesh, really feeling the sensory experience of it, your brain fires those exact same neural pathways. It releases that exact same chemical cocktail. Your salivary glands will physically activate based solely on a thought.
I want to make this super relatable and a bit darker to really hammer home how powerful this is. Think about lying in bed and having a vivid, terrifying nightmare.
Well, that's a perfect example.
You are lying perfectly still on a soft mattress. The room is locked, it is entirely safe, it is quiet, the ambient temperature is perfectly comfortable. But in the theater of your mind, you are being chased by a threat or you are falling off a cliff.
And then you wake up.
You jolt awake. And what physically happens? Your heart is violently hammering against your ribs. You are gasping for air. Your palms are drenched in sweat. Maybe your muscles are actively shaking. Your physical biological body is producing a massive, highly taxing chemical reaction, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline in response to a scenario that is entirely fabricated. It's just a ghost story playing out inside your skull.
Your body is reacting with absolute biological sincerity to a reality that does not exist outside your own imagination. Now, apply the concept of neuroplasticity to this mechanism.
Neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah, which is the brain's inherent, lifelong ability to physically reorganize its own structure by forming new neural connections in response to learning or experience. The foundational rule of neuroplasticity in the scientific literature is famously summarized as neurons that fire together, wire together.
I've always thought the standard metaphors for this are a bit dry. Let's think of your brain's neural pathways less like a textbook diagram and more like water carving a canyon into the earth.
Oh, okay, I like where this is going.
Anxiety, for many of us, is a deep, rushing, powerful river. It has been flowing for years. It is the path of absolute least resistance. Whenever a drop of water, like a new thought or a stressor, hits the landscape of your brain, it naturally wants to rush down that deep anxiety canyon.
Because gravity takes it there.
Exactly. Visualizing a new outcome, trying to think positively, is like standing at the top of that canyon with a small metal spoon, trying to dig a new channel to divert the river.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. At first, it seems completely futile. The water still wants to violently rush down the path of anxiety. But over time, day after day, as you keep digging with that spoon, you slowly create a new channel. Eventually, the water finds the new path, and the old anxiety canyon begins to dry up.
That is a phenomenal visualization of the physical process of neurogenesis and synaptic pruning. Every time you have a thought, an electrical signal travels across a synaptic cleft. When you repeat a thought or an emotional reaction over and over, the brain realizes this pathway is important.
So it reinforces it.
Literally. It insulates that specific neural connection with a fatty substance called myelin. This myelination acts like insulation on an electrical wire, allowing the signal to travel incredibly fast and with almost zero conscious effort. This is the physical, structural mechanism of a deeply ingrained habit.
So our unconscious mind is basically a massive storage facility for our automatic myelinated habits and our deeply ingrained limiting beliefs.
Yes.
If we constantly rehearse stress, anxiety, and distraction in the quiet moments of our minds, like if we are sitting in traffic always imagining the worst-case scenario at work, or lying in bed angrily replaying an argument we had with a spouse 5 years ago, we are repeatedly actively firing those stress neurons.
We're grabbing a shovel and digging the anxiety canyon deeper.
Exactly. We are physically paving wider, stronger, faster neural highways for stress. We are actively wiring our own biological hardware to be exceptionally, effortlessly good at feeling overwhelmed.
You are practicing anxiety, and your brain is making you a master of it. But the reverse must fundamentally also be true. The mechanisms of neuroplasticity are entirely neutral. They don't care what you are practicing, they just build the road.
That's the key right there.
If imagination and rehearsal can cause profound physical panic and build thick, myelinated pathways for stress, it can also cause profound physical healing, resilience, and deep peace.
That is the ultimate, incredibly hopeful promise of this research. If you use vivid visualization, if you intentionally close your eyes, imagine a positive outcome, imagine resolving the conflict, imagine completing the project. And most importantly, if you truly feel the emotional joy, the physical relief, the profound gratitude at that outcome occurring before it actually happens in the physical material world, you begin to fire an entirely new sequence of neurons.
You trigger the release of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin instead of cortisol?
And if you repeat this practice consistently, digging with that spoon, you literally build new physical neurological hardware. You wire your brain to naturally default to joy. You condition your physiological body to anticipate and expect success rather than constantly scanning the horizon for a threat.
You are essentially using your conscious mind to trick your unconscious nervous system into a state of abundance and safety. But the texts mention a massive, frustrating biological hurdle here, something clinically referred to as the refractory period of an emotion.
Okay, the refractory period.
Understanding this is the absolute key to actually making the change stick.
What exactly is the refractory period, and why is it the invisible wall we keep slamming into when we try to change?
The refractory period is the actual, measurable lifespan of an emotion after the initial triggering event has completely passed. It is the amount of time the chemical cocktail of a specific feeling lingers in your bloodstream and your nervous system, keeping your body in that altered state.
Okay, let's ground this. Give me a mundane example.
You are driving to the grocery store, and someone aggressively cuts you off in traffic, nearly causing an accident. That is the trigger. You instantly feel a massive justifiable spike of anger and fear.
Heart pounding, gripping the wheel.
Exactly. The actual physical event, the swerving of the cars, lasts maybe 2 seconds. It is over. You are safe. But you might stay angry, gripping the steering wheel, vibrating at that low chaotic frequency for 2 solid hours.
Oh, easily. Or longer.
Or you might walk into the house, tell your partner about the idiot in traffic, replay the scenario in your mind, and stay irritable for the entire evening. That extended, lingering time frame where the chemicals are still active is the refractory period.
So your body is basically marinating in highly toxic stress chemicals long after the physical threat has entirely vanished from reality.
Exactly. And the danger is cumulative. If you allow that refractory period of anger or stress to last for hours or days, it becomes your general mood. If you keep the refractory period going for weeks or months by constantly revisiting the stressful memories, it literally becomes your temperament. If it lasts for years, that elevated stress response becomes inextricably wired into your personality traits. People just say, oh, he's an angry guy. No, he is just trapped in a years-long refractory period of past traumas.
The goal, according to the exploration of these sources, is to become highly acutely conscious of this mechanical process. You want to consciously, ruthlessly shorten the lifespan of negative emotions.
Nip it in the bud.
Right. When someone cuts you off, you acknowledge the immediate frustration, you feel the spike of adrenaline, but you actively refuse to let it linger. You refuse to keep the story alive in your head because you know doing so is literally wiring your brain for misery.
Yes, you stop digging the canyon.
Conversely, you want to intentionally, artificially prolong the biochemical state of joy and gratitude. When something genuinely good happens, no matter how small, or when you sit down and vividly visualize something beautiful, you dwell on it. You sink into it.
Let it wash over you.
You intentionally lengthen the refractory period of the high-frequency emotions to build that new neural highway.
You become the architect of your own chemistry. But the exploration in our source material does not stop at the boundaries of biology and neuroscience. It moves even further down the rabbit hole.
Oh boy, here we go.
It shifts from the biological scale of neurons and synapses all the way down to the subatomic scale of the universe itself. This is where the texts introduce foundational, mind-bending principles of quantum physics.
This is where the conversation usually loses people, because it sounds like science fiction. But the sources are drawing on peer-reviewed, Nobel Prize-winning physics. They specifically look at the observer effect and the baffling concept of quantum entanglement.
It's hard science.
It is hard science. And they use these principles to explain how our subjective consciousness directly physically interacts with the objective material world around us.
To understand this, we really have to unpack the observer effect, which is arguably the most unsettling discovery in modern science. It stems from the classic quantum double-slit experiment.
Okay, the double slit experiment.
Right. In this experiment, physicists discovered that subatomic particles, photons, electrons, the tiny invisible building blocks of all physical matter in the universe, actually change their fundamental behavior depending entirely on whether or not a conscious observer is watching them.
Let's break that down into plain English, because it breaks my brain every time I think about it. Walk me through the mechanics of what the physicists actually saw in the lab.
It is a concept that utterly shattered the deterministic, clockwork view of classical Newtonian physics. In incredibly simplified terms, imagine firing tiny particles at a wall with two vertical slits in it.
Like shooting tiny marbles.
Exactly. When scientists fire these particles without measuring which slit they go through, the particles behave like a wave of energy. They pass through both slits simultaneously, interfering with themselves and creating a complex wave pattern on the back wall.
So it's not a marble anymore, it's a ripple on a pond.
Right. This means that before an electron is observed, it exists in a state of pure quantum superposition. It is a wave of infinite mathematically probable possibilities. It is everywhere and nowhere at once.
Okay, so when no one is looking, matter acts like a wave of potential. But what happens when they place a detector to watch the particles, like to see which specific slit it goes through?
This is where reality gets weird. The exact moment the scientists place a detector to observe and measure which specific slit the particle goes through, the wave function instantly collapses.
Just because it's being watched.
Just because it's being measured by an observer. The particle stops behaving like a wave of infinite potential and suddenly behaves like a solid, single physical bullet, passing through only one slit and leaving a simple pattern on the wall. The mere act of observation, the presence of consciousness measuring the system, literally forces the quantum field to collapse from infinite possibilities into a single, defined material reality.
That is wild. And the texts take this laboratory phenomenon and extrapolate it to our daily lives. They argue that this isn't just a bizarre quirk happening in a sterile laboratory with isolated electrons.
No, what applies to us?
They argue that because you, your body, your house, your bank account, and your environment are fundamentally made of these exact same subatomic particles, this proves that your focused attention and your unique energetic emotional signature literally physically mold the potential outcomes of your life.
The underlying logic is profound. You are a massive walking collection of quantum fields. When you align a crystal clear, highly focused intention in your conscious thoughts with an elevated high-frequency emotion in your physical body like joy or deep gratitude, you create a powerful, coherent electromagnetic signature.
Like we talked about with the magnetometer.
Exactly. The signature acts as a magnetic resonance in the quantum field. You are essentially acting as the ultimate observer of your own life, pulling your deeply desired outcome from the invisible field of infinite potential, the waves, and collapsing it into physical, experiential reality, the particle.
Look, I have to jump in here and aggressively play devil's advocate.
I expected nothing less.
Because I'm imagining the listener who is currently driving to work in heavy gridlock traffic, or someone who is exhausted folding a massive, endless pile of laundry, or dealing with a sick toddler right now.
Very real scenarios.
To them, this sounds like absolute magic. It sounds highly esoteric, bordering on toxic positivity. The immediate pushback is, how does a deeply tired person, stressed about a rising mortgage rate and an angry boss, practically apply quantum wave function collapse to a chaotic Tuesday afternoon?
Yeah, how does this pay the bills?
Right. Does thinking happy thoughts magically fold the laundry and pay the bills? How do you actually do this in the real world?
It is the single most vital question to ask. If we leave this conversation as an abstract lecture on quantum physics, it is utterly useless to the parent folding the laundry. It just becomes intellectual entertainment. The texts anticipate this exact skepticism and bring the grand theories back to the solid ground using a very specific, deeply actionable technique. They call it the process of finding the 0 point.
Finding the 0 point, what does that actually look like practically when my kids are screaming and my phone is buzzing?
To intentionally influence the quantum field, to actually collapse new possibilities into your life, you cannot be mentally trapped in the traumas of the past or obsessively worrying about the disasters of the future. You have to anchor your consciousness entirely, completely in the present moment, because the present moment is the only intersection where quantum creation actually happens.
So no past, no future.
Right. Finding the 0 point involves the incredibly difficult task of intentionally silencing the analytical mind. You have to hit the pause button on that relentless mechanical loop of stressful thoughts, the grocery list, the argument you had yesterday, the fear of the upcoming performance review.
Look, if I'm vibrating at 100 hertz because I just got a terrible, threatening email from my boss telling me to just take deep breaths and find the 0 point, is not going to magically transport me to a state of infinite quantum potential.
No, of course not.
My brain is going to be screaming about that email, generating cortisol the entire time I'm trying to breathe. It sounds impossible.
And the neurological research completely validates your frustration. That screaming brain is a refractory period actively fighting back against your attempt to change. You do not simply jump from a state of biological panic to a state of profound peace in 3 seconds just by closing your eyes.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
Finding the 0 point is not relaxing. At first, it is an act of severe, uncomfortable mental friction. It requires immense effort to stop the momentum of a rushing river.
So how do you push through that friction? How do you unspool the tangled, chaotic mess of your stressed brain so it becomes a straight, clean line of focus?
The mechanism is conceptually simple, but practically grueling. You must focus your attention entirely on the physical, visceral rhythm of your own breathing, or the feeling of your heartbeat.
Just anchor entirely to the physical body.
Yes. You take slow, deep, intentional breaths, mechanically forcing your diaphragm down. This physical action sends a signal via the vagus nerve to your nervous system, overriding the amygdala and chemically signaling that you are not in physical danger.
So you're forcing the biology to calm down.
Exactly. As you forcefully sustain this focus on the breath, the chaotic mental chatter slowly begins to lose its momentum. You begin to notice the tiny, silent gaps between your thoughts. You slip into that gap. That silent space is the 0 point. It is a quiet, unburdened state. It is a state of absolute, pure emotional and mental neutrality.
So you aren't trying to feel happy yet. You are just trying to stop feeling panicked. You are trying to reach neutral ground.
Yes. And it is only in this profound pause, this completely silent, neutral state where you have temporarily forgotten your name, your problems, and your schedule, that we stop automatically firing the old neural pathways of our past.
The clean slate.
When you whistling hit the 0 point, you're no longer projecting your historical trauma onto your immediate future. You become an open vessel. From that hard-won place of neutrality, you can then deliberately introduce the clear mental intention of what you want, combined with the elevated high-frequency emotion, the joy, the gratitude, the relief of having it. That is when you begin collapsing entirely new possibilities into your material reality.
That makes the esoteric concept much more tangible. It is about violently stopping the massive momentum of your old biological habits just long enough to plant a single new neurological seed.
That's beautifully put.
But, and the sources are fiercely, emphatically clear about this next point, you cannot just sit on a comfortable meditation cushion, find the 0 point, visualize a promotion, think positive thoughts, and then sit on the couch expecting the universe to knock on your front door and hand you a briefcase full of money.
Absolutely not. That is the most dangerous, pervasive misconception in popular, watered-down interpretations of this kind of material.
It's just magical thinking at that point.
Right. The texts emphatically, aggressively state the absolute non-negotiable necessity of physical action in the material world. You must combine the energetic work with deep perseverance, grit, and taking 100% radical responsibility for every outcome in your life.
Let's transition into the actual mechanics of change here. Let's talk about that responsibility and the massive wall of resistance we all inevitably feel when we try to take action.
The dreaded procrastination.
Yes. The texts feature these striking, almost poetic philosophical reflections regarding human effort and procrastination. And they frame the concept of procrastination in a way I had never really considered before. We usually think of procrastination as just a moral failing, just simple laziness, or a lack of self-discipline.
But the sources reframe it entirely. They don't see it as laziness. They frame procrastination as a brilliant, highly effective victory of the human ego.
A victory of the ego. Explain that dynamic. How is avoiding my work a victory for my ego?
To understand this, you must understand that the ego's primary evolutionary job is not to make you happy or successful or fulfilled.
What is it then?
The ego's only job is to keep you alive and safe. And to the primitive ego, the word safe translates exactly to the word familiar. Even if your familiar reality is deeply miserable, highly stressful, or soul-crushing, the ego vastly prefers it because it is predictable.
Better the devil you know.
Exactly. You survived yesterday, so the ego wants to repeat yesterday exactly. Real growth. Actually taking physical action on your dreams, applying for the terrifying new job, having the painfully vulnerable conversation with your spouse, finally starting the creative project, requires stepping completely out of the familiar, predictable zone and into the vast unknown.
Which the ego hates.
The ego views the unknown as a literal, mortal threat to its existence. So to stop you from entering the unknown, it deploys procrastination as a highly sophisticated defense mechanism. It creates brilliant, perfectly rational-sounding excuses in your mind. I am just too tired to work on this today. The economic timing isn't right to start a business. I need to read 3 more books and do more research before I'm ready.
Wow. So procrastination is not a lack of drive. It is just your brain's overactive security system trying to keep you safely locked inside your familiar, predictable misery.
Precisely. It is a biological handbrake. Overcoming it requires leaning directly, painfully, into the discomfort of the unknown. It requires expanding your physical and emotional capabilities by forcing yourself to act, even when every fiber of your nervous system is screaming at you to retreat to the couch and look at your phone.
You have to push through the friction.
You have to exert immense physical and mental effort in the dense material world to match and validate the high-frequency energetic intention you created in the quiet of the 0 point.
There is a really striking visceral metaphor from the philosophical texts that illustrates this concept of effort perfectly. It is a quote discussing the chaotic, violent environment of a horse race. It says, "The horse that finishes just one neck ahead is the one that wins the race."
It is a profound image of marginal gains. What does that signify to you in the context of taking action on our goals?
To me, it illustrates the profound, disproportionate difference in reality-altering outcomes based on incredibly small, marginal increases in physical effort. The horse that wins the grand prize, the horse that goes down in history, didn't run twice as fast as the horse that came in second place. It didn't give 200% effort compared to the other horse's 100%. It just gave that tiny, agonizing bit extra.
Just a fraction more.
It pushed just a microscopic fraction harder at the exact right moment of maximum pain. The text uses this powerful image to contrast the tragedy of giving 50% or 90% of your effort versus committing 100%.
And we hold back so often.
We really do. A lot of people put out a partial effort in life. They try a little bit, they read half a book, they start a diet for 3 days, they hold back that last 10% of their energy because of an unconscious fear of failure, or they get distracted by the tennis balls of daily life.
But the material world, according to this philosophy, only bends and bows to those who give their absolute all. It is about total, uncompromising commitment to the physical action, not just the beautiful quantum thought.
That is the perfect essential bridge between the two realms, because brute force physical action without the right energetic frequency is just exhausting, soul-crushing hustle that leads to burnout.
Pure suffering.
And high-frequency energy and visualization without physical action is just comfortable daydreaming. You absolutely need the synthesis of both to actually shape reality.
You do.
So let's bring this entire massive, mind-bending conversation full circle. We have journeyed through some incredibly dense, diverse intellectual and scientific terrain today. How do we practically synthesize all of this?
That's a lot to pull together.
It is. How do we take the exhausted parent on the couch and combine the practical, time-saving highlight tactics, the elevated electromagnetic frequencies of our emotions, the literal neurological rewiring of our brains, the quantum wave collapse, and the physical, gritty, uncomfortable action?
If we pull the camera back and synthesize the entire journey, the roadmap looks like this. We started with the incredibly common tragic image of a person lost in the cold blue glow of a screen, feeling utterly exhausted, biologically drained, and acting as a passive, helpless victim of their own overwhelming schedule.
Completely in reaction mode.
Yes, they were living entirely in reaction, their amygdala constantly firing, their energy leaking away. But by deeply understanding the biological mechanics of our attention, by learning to mercilessly cut distractions and set a single, meaningful daily highlight, we take the crucial first step in reclaiming our focus and resting our prefrontal cortex.
We stop dodging the tennis balls.
Exactly. Then, by understanding the measurable electromagnetic frequency of our emotions, we realize that we must actively, ruthlessly curate our inner state. We must intentionally choose acceptance and joy over the familiar comforts of guilt and fear, so that we don't choke our own mental bandwidth.
And then, once we achieve that elevated frequency, we don't just sit there feeling good. We use it as fuel. We use it to literally rewrite our biological hardware through the scientifically proven mechanisms of neuroplasticity.
Digging a new canyon.
Right. We visualize the future we want so intensely and with such vivid sensory detail that our brain believes it has already happened, building the thick, myelinated pathways to naturally support it.
Yes. We literally build a new biological machine. And with that newly wired hardware and that sustained high-frequency energy, we become capable of tapping into the quantum power of our consciousness. We fight through the friction to find the 0 point.
Breathing through the noise.
We align our clear conscious intentions with our elevated emotions to act as the observer, drawing entirely new possibilities out of the infinite quantum field. And finally, crucially, we ground all of that massive energetic and neurological work into the heavy physical world through decisive, unyielding, uncomfortable action.
Winning by a neck.
We push through the ego's procrastination. We push that one neck ahead in the race. When you combine all these diverse elements into a single way of living, the ultimate realization is profound. You hold the pen to your own story.
You are not a secondary, passive character in a tragic movie directed by your email inbox or the algorithm on your phone.
The central, undeniable thesis of all these combined diverse sources is that life, naturally and intrinsically, wants to evolve toward abundance, complexity, and happiness. If we can just manage to get out of our own biological way.
If we can just get out of our own way.
If we stop resisting the unknown, if we stop neuroclastically rehearsing our stress, and if we bravely step into our inherent quantum capability to consciously create.
That brings us right back to you, the listener. Because all of this dense science, all of this quantum physics, all of this profound philosophy, it all points to a single, staggeringly empowering truth about who and what you actually are.
You have more power than you think.
So much more. You are not a machine designed to clear administrative tasks. You are not a fragile biological robot meant to just endlessly process stress hormones, dodge tennis balls, and pay bills until you die. You are an active, vital, extraordinarily powerful participant in an incredibly dynamic, highly responsive universe. Your focused attention matters. Your emotional frequency matters. They literally physically shape the material world around you.
The realization that your inner subjective reality actively creates your outer objective reality is a massive, heavy responsibility. It means you can no longer play the victim, but it is also the ultimate, most profound freedom a human being can experience.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought, something for you to deeply mull over today, whether you are finishing your long commute, finally putting away that endless pile of laundry, or just sitting quietly in your living room. The texts repeatedly remind us that the universe is not static.
Never static.
It is in constant, vibrant motion. It is an interconnected web of infinite quantum possibilities, and every single thing is deeply, intrinsically connected to everything else.
Nothing is fixed. Not your neural pathways, not your current stressful circumstances, not your perceived limitations, and certainly not your future.
So keeping all of this incredible potential in mind, the next time you feel that familiar, automatic, low-frequency urge to pull out your phone to escape a quiet, mildly uncomfortable moment.
The ambient fatigue creeping in.
Yeah, exactly. The next time you find yourself sitting on the very edge of the couch, tempted to disappear into the cold blue glow instead of engaging with the warm, chaotic, messy room around you, ask yourself, what infinite, beautiful, life-altering possibility are you completely ignoring right in front of you simply because you forgot to look up?